Hello, and welcome to the SCPa Works WIOA Title I Adult and Dislocated Worker, or DW, training session. Determining eligibility for WIOA Title I Adult and Dislocated Worker programs is the critical first step in ensuring that workforce services are delivered equitably, compliantly, and to individuals who can benefit most from them. Eligibility is not simply a data entry task. It establishes program intent, drives service strategy, and ensures alignment with federal and state workforce policy.
WIOA is the federal law that guides the nation's workforce development system. Enacted in 2014, WIOA strengthens coordination among employment, training, education, and supportive service programs to help job seekers access quality jobs and to help employers meet their workforce needs. The law emphasizes career pathways, work-based learning, and services for individuals with barriers to employment, while holding programs accountable for measurable employment and earnings outcomes.
The WIOA Adult and Dislocated Worker programs serve individuals with differing employment histories and barriers to employment. While both programs support access to career and training services, each has distinct eligibility criteria, priority considerations, and documentation requirements. Accurate eligibility determination ensures participants are enrolled in the correct funding stream, receive appropriate services, and are counted correctly for performance and reporting purposes. Staff are responsible for collecting, verifying, and documenting eligibility information in accordance with WIOA regulations and Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry guidance. This information must be accurately entered into the Commonwealth Workforce Development System, CWDS, supported by source documentation and reviewed for completeness prior to enrollment. This training will walk through the eligibility requirements for both adult and dislocated worker programs, explain how to assess and document eligibility in CWDS, and highlight common compliance risks and best practices. By the end of this session, staff will be equipped to confidently determine eligibility, apply priority of service where required, and ensure WIOA enrollments are timely, accurate, and auditable.
The WIOA Title I Adult Program provides federally funded workforce services to help adults prepare for, obtain, and retain employment that leads to self-sufficiency. The program focuses on serving individuals who face barriers to employment and supporting access to career pathways aligned with regional labor market needs. Eligible participants may receive career services, training services, and supportive services designed to improve employability, increase earnings, and promote long-term job retention. Services may include assessment, career planning, occupational skills training, work-based learning, and connections to employers. The WIOA Title I Dislocated Worker Program serves individuals who have lost employment through no fault of their own and are unlikely to return to their previous industry or occupation. Eligibility is based on a qualifying dislocation event, such as a layoff, plant closure, or separation from self-employment due to economic conditions. Eligible dislocated workers may include individuals who are laid off and eligible for or have exhausted unemployment insurance, individuals affected by permanent layoffs or closures, displaced homemakers, or workers impacted by trade, disaster, or military-related employment transitions. Proper determination ensures participants are enrolled under the correct funding stream and receive services aligned with reemployment and career transition needs. All eligibility, service delivery, and outcomes are documented in the Commonwealth Workforce Development System, CWDS, in accordance with federal and state guidance. Under the WIOA, there are two levels of services, basic and individualized services. A determination that a participant needs individualized and/or training services can be made without regard to how long the individual has been receiving services at each level. Participants in adult programs must meet eligibility requirements before being provided training services.
Priority of service under WIOA ensures that limited workforce resources are directed first to individuals who need them most. In SCPa Works, this requirement supports our regional commitment to equity, access, and outcomes for residents facing the greatest barriers to employment. Priority of service is a WIOA requirement to prioritize access to services and training funds. This applies when resources are limited. The populations who must be served first are veterans and eligible spouses, individuals who are low income, and individuals with barriers to employment. Under SCPa Works policy, veterans and eligible spouses must always be served first.
The second priority of service must meet the needs of non-veteran individuals who are low income and individuals with one or more barriers to employment or are basic skills deficient. The SCPa Work's third priority of service focuses on veterans and eligible spouses who are not low income or basic skills deficient. The SCPa Work's fourth priority of service provides career pathway training, education, and employment to individuals who have been affected by the judicial system. Priority of service is not optional and is not based on wait lists or first-come, first-served practices. Staff must assess and document priority at intake and ensure that it is considered before enrolling an individual into individualized career services or training. Across SCPa Work service delivery model, including virtual services and community access points, staff are expected to apply priority of service consistently, document it accurately in CWDS, and ensure service decisions align with both WIOA requirements and regional equity goals.
Under WIOA, there are multiple service categories. Basic career services do not require an individual to be WIOA eligible, and therefore do not require case managers to enroll an individual, nor complete the eligibility process in order to provide basic career services. Basic career services must be made available and, at a minimum, must include the services listed on the screen, as consistent with allowable Title I program activities and federal cost principles. WIOA Title I Basic Career Services are universally accessible services designed to help individuals enter or re-enter the workforce. These services are available to all individuals seeking employment and do not require WIOA eligibility determination or enrollment in the Adult or Dislocated Worker Program. Basic career services include outreach, intake, and orientation to the workforce system, initial assessment of skills, interests, and service needs, labor market information, job search and placement assistance, referrals to partner programs, and information on training opportunities and supportive services. Services may be delivered in person or virtually and are often the first point of contact for job seekers. Basic career services provide individuals with the information and tools needed to make informed employment decisions and determine whether additional WIOA-funded career or training services are appropriate. When a need for more individualized support is identified, participants may be referred for eligibility determination and enrollment into WIOA Adult or Dislocated Worker Services. Under WIOA Title I, basic career services are universally accessible and may be provided to any individual seeking employment or workforce information. Individuals do not need to be determined eligible for the WIOA Adult or Dislocated Worker Program, and they do not need to be enrolled in CWDS as a WIOA participant to receive these services.
Individualized career services are targeted services provided only to individuals who have been determined eligible for WIOA adult or dislocated worker programs and need additional support beyond basic career services to secure employment or advance in their careers. In order to provide individual career services to an individual, case managers are required to complete the eligibility process, followed by the program enrollment process by collecting source documentation and completing a WIOA application with the individual. Key features of the provision of individualized career services include the requirement of WIOA eligibility and enrollment, the requirement that the services are tailored to the individual's employment goals, skills, barriers. Individualized career services may include comprehensive and specialized assessment of skills and career interests, development of an individual employment plan, IEP, career counseling and planning, workshops and individualized job search assistance, case management, referrals to training, supportive services, or other WIOA-funded programs. These services bridge the gap between basic career services and more intensive training or employment support, helping participants achieve sustainable employment and career progression. Documentation is a requirement for all service providers delivering WIOA individualized career services. All services must be recorded in CWDS under the participant's record, aligned with their individual employment plan and case management notes. Training services are available to those participants who are unable to find employment. Need and ability to benefit from WIOA funds must be established, and the participant must have the skills and qualifications to successfully complete the training program. An individual's need for training shall be determined through an assessment. Participants with marketable skills within an in-demand occupation shall not be deemed eligible for WIOA-funded training.
The WIOA Adult Program serves individuals 18 and older who are seeking employment and need support to achieve self-sufficiency. Key eligibility criteria: age, 18 years or older. Work authorization means that participants must be legally authorized to work in the U.S. Participants must be a U.S. citizen or a non-citizen lawfully authorized to work in the U.S. Case managers are required to collect government-based documentation from participants to prove that the individuals have a legal right to be employed in the U.S. A list of acceptable documentation is included in the CWDS WIOA Title I Data Element and Acceptable Eligibility Verification tool. Proof of authorization to work includes being a U.S. citizen, a permanent resident, a refugee, or having specific work authorization, generally demonstrated with documents like a passport or a green card, as mandated by the U.S. Department of Labor or DOL and immigration laws. Employment or barrier considerations mean that the individual is no longer employed or underemployed or is facing barriers to employment. For WIOA eligibility, males born on or after January 1, 1960, must register with Selective Service between ages 18 and 26. Failure to register, even for non-citizens, results in denial of WIOA services. All U.S. male citizens, as well as refugees and individuals who have immigrated to the U.S., are required to provide proof of Selective Service registration, a status information letter, or proof that the individual was not knowing and willful. A list of males who are not required to register and who are exempt from this WIOA requirement can be found on the Selective Service System website at sss.gov. Case managers must detail all aspects surrounding Selective Service registration in the eligibility case note, where all details of WIOA Title I eligibility are documented.
The WIOA Dislocated Worker Program serves individuals who have lost employment through no fault of their own and who need assistance to re-enter the workforce. Eligibility is based on a worker's connection to the labor market and the circumstances of job loss, rather than income level. An individual may be eligible as a dislocated worker if they have been laid off or received a notice of layoff, are unlikely to return to their previous industry or occupation, and are eligible for or have exhausted unemployment compensation. Individuals may also qualify if they were self-employed and unemployed due to economic conditions or natural disasters. WIOA also recognizes additional dislocated worker categories, including displaced homemakers, individuals separated due to plant closures or mass layoffs, and certain individuals impacted by trade or economic shifts. Dislocated worker eligibility must be verified and documented in CWDS, including proof of separation, layoff status, or qualifying circumstances. Once determined eligible, individuals may access individualized career services and training designed to support rapid re-employment in in-demand occupations.
Before a WIOA application can be started in CWDS, the case manager must collect and review required source documentation from the individual to verify eligibility. WIOA regulations require eligibility to be fully determined and documented prior to enrollment to ensure program integrity and compliance with federal and state monitoring standards. Case managers should reference the WIOA Title I Data Element and Acceptable Eligibility Verification found in CWDS for every case managed. Source documentation is used to verify key eligibility elements such as identity, age, citizenship or authorization to work, selective service registration when applicable, dislocation status, income, and barriers to employment. Eligibility cannot be based on self-attestation unless specifically permitted and documented according to policy. Starting a WIOA application without verifying source documentation can result in ineligible enrollments, disallowed costs, and monitoring findings. As a result, SCPa works require staff to confirm that all necessary documents have been collected and validated before initiating the WIOA application in CWDS. This process ensures accurate eligibility determination, protects program funding, and supports consistent, equitable service delivery across all SCPa Works service access points.
Under WIOA, males born on or after January 1, 1960, who are 18 through 25 years old, must be registered with the Selective Service System, SSS, to be eligible for WIOA Title I adult or dislocated worker services unless they qualify for an allowable exemption. This requirement applies to U.S. citizens and many non-citizens, including refugees and certain immigrants. For refugees and individuals who have immigrated to the United States, selective service requirements depend on age, gender, date of entry, and immigration status at the time they were required to register. Some individuals may have been too old to register upon entry or may have entered the country in a status that did not require registration at that time. Acceptable source documentation may include proof of selective service registration, registration acknowledgement or verification printout, or documentation supporting a valid exemption, such as age at entry or immigration status, or an approved status information letter, SIL, from the Selective Service System when registration did not occur and eligibility must be determined. Self-attestation is not permitted for selective service compliance. Case managers must collect, review, and upload appropriate source documentation into CWDS and clearly explain the determination in case notes. For individuals who were required to register but did not, staff must follow state and local policy to determine whether eligibility may be established based on documentation and justification. Proper documentation of selective service compliance for refugees and immigrants ensures federal compliance, equitable treatment, and accurate eligibility determinations under WIOA while recognizing the unique circumstances of individuals entering the United States later in life.
When verifying authorization to work under WIOA eligibility for refugees and individuals who immigrated into the United States, service providers must rely on official guidance from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, for Form I-9 documentation requirements. USCIS is the authoritative source that defines which documents are acceptable to establish identity and employment authorization. Service providers must not create local interpretations or substitute document lists. Instead, staff should reference the USCIS Form I-9 lists of acceptable documents, List A, List B, and List C, to ensure documentation is reviewed consistently and in compliance with federal requirements. Staff are responsible for confirming that documents appear genuine and relate to the individual presenting them, without requesting more or different documents than required. Document review must be conducted in a non-discriminatory manner, consistent with federal law. For WIOA eligibility, documentation used to verify authorization to work must be copied or scanned, uploaded into CWDS, and clearly linked to the appropriate eligibility element. When questions arise, staff should consult current USCIS guidance rather than relying on informal practices or prior experience. Using USCIS as the source for I-9 documentation requirements protects program integrity, supports equitable treatment of participants, and ensures WIOA eligibility determinations meet federal compliance standards.
Under WIOA, barriers to employment are conditions or circumstances that make it more difficult for an individual to obtain, retain, or advance in employment. Identifying barriers is critical because it helps ensure priority of service, informs service planning, and supports equitable access to workforce resources. Common WIOA-recognized barriers include being low income, having basic skills deficiency, limited English proficiency, disability, justice involvement, homelessness, foster care history, long-term unemployment, or receiving public assistance. Youth-specific barriers and other barriers defined under WIOA may also apply. Barriers must be documented and entered accurately in CWDS. Individuals may have more than one barrier, and all applicable barriers should be recorded to fully reflect their employment challenges and service needs. Within SCPa works, identifying barriers supports a person-centered, equity-driven approach to service delivery and ensures WIOA resources are targeted to individuals who face the greatest challenges to employment success. Barriers to employment include low income, recipient of public assistance, basic skills deficient, English language learner, other barriers defined under WIOA. When funds are limited, priority of service is given to public assistance recipients, low-income individuals, or those who are basic skills deficient. Documentation is vital to all WIOA customers. Eligibility must be verified and documented in CWDS before enrollment in WIOA-funded individualized career or training services.
Under WIOA, other barriers refers to additional circumstances that make it difficult for an adult to obtain or retain employment. These are specifically recognized in federal guidance to ensure services reach individuals who need extra support, even if they don't meet low-income or public assistance criteria. Common other barriers include displaced homemakers, individuals who previously worked in the home but are no longer supported by a spouse and are seeking employment. Older workers, adults facing challenges in entering or re-entering the workforce due to age. Individuals with disabilities, physical, mental, or developmental conditions that limit employment options. Ex-offenders, individuals with a criminal record who face barriers to employment. Homeless individuals or those in unstable housing, including those at risk of homelessness. English language learners or basic skills deficient, individuals lacking literacy, numeracy, or English proficiency. Low-income individuals facing multiple barriers, those who may not receive public assistance but still face significant obstacles. The intent is to ensure WIOA reaches individuals who face significant employment challenges beyond standard eligibility categories.
For WIOA Title I adult and dislocated worker programs, eligibility must be supported by source documentation that is collected, reviewed, and uploaded into CWDS. Each eligibility element has specific documentation requirements, and all documents must be legible, current, and clearly tied to the participant. At a minimum, source documentation must verify identity and age, authorization to work in the United States, and selective service registration when applicable. Additional documentation is required based on the program type. For adult participants, documentation may be required to verify low income status or priority of service criteria, including receipt of public assistance or other qualifying barriers. For dislocated workers, documentation must clearly establish job separation, such as a layoff notice, unemployment compensation records, or employer separation documentation. CWDS requires that source documents be uploaded to the participant record and linked to the appropriate eligibility elements. Case notes must clearly describe what documentation was reviewed, how eligibility was determined, and how the document supports the eligibility decision. Self-attestation may only be used when explicitly allowed and must be justified and documented in accordance with policy. Failure to upload and properly associate source documentation in CWDS can result in monitoring findings, question costs, or disallowed enrollments. SCPa works expect staff to complete documentation review and uploads before enrollment to ensure compliance, data integrity, and consistent application of WIOA eligibility requirements across all service delivery methods.
Case notes in CWDS are the official record of services, decisions, and participant interactions. They document what was done, why it was done, and how it aligns with program policy, ensuring transparency, consistency, and accountability across the workforce system. Accurate and timely case notes support WIOA compliance and monitoring by clearly explaining eligibility determinations, priority of service decisions, service delivery, and outcomes. In the absence of complete case notes, activities and expenditures may be questioned or disallowed during monitoring or audits. Case notes also support quality service delivery. They allow multiple staff and partners to understand a participant's history, barriers, goals, and progress, which is especially critical in SCPa Works' virtual and community access point service model. In CWDS, case notes should be clear, factual, and objective, entered in real time or as close to the service date as possible, and written so that an external reviewer can understand the full participant's story without additional explanation. Strong case notes protect funding, support participants, and demonstrate program effectiveness. The content on this slide can be found in the CWDS Help Center. Subrecipient staff are expected to adequately listen and respond appropriately to WIOA participants, providing them access to resources, tools, and skills to help them obtain employment, taking into account existing barriers, and accurately documenting in CWDS the activities associated with these interactions, including action steps taken and future steps anticipated. Vendors need to ensure that activity is documented between the case manager and the participant, illustrating that progressive steps are taken toward fulfilling the participant's vocational needs and goals. Case notes serve as a record of accountability for the case manager and the service provider organization. Case notes also provide continuity of service in the instance of a change in the case manager or the need for an adjacent department or staff member to facilitate the vocational activities or benefits. Vendors must ensure that case notes record the details of services and advice provided to the participant, document the client's participation in activities and progress, cap nuances regarding factors affecting eligibility and other information of note, justify services recommended and potentially provided, provide a focal point for monitoring service delivery's progression and effectiveness, protect the case manager and organization from potential legal issues, provide a narrative supporting allowable costs in alignment with 2 CFR 200 cost principles. The content on this slide can be found in the CWDS Help Center. The DAP case note method is a structured approach to documentation that ensures case notes in CWDS are clear, consistent, and compliant. DAP stands for Data, Assessment, and Plan, and it helps staff document not only what happened, but why decisions were made and what will happen next. Data captures the objective facts of the interaction. This includes the date of contact, type of service provided, participant statements, documents reviewed, referrals made, and any measurable information. Data should be factual and free from opinions or assumptions. Assessment reflects the case manager's professional judgment based on the data collected. This section explains how the information affects eligibility, priority of service, employability, progress towards goals, or the need for additional services. The assessment answers the question, what does this information mean for the participant? Plan outlines the next steps. It documents agreed-upon actions, responsible parties, timelines, follow-up activities, and any services to be scheduled or authorized. The plan should be specific and actionable, so another staff member can easily continue services if needed.
Case notes tell the full story in CWDS. Effective case notes in CWDS must clearly tell the participant's story and allow an external reviewer to understand exactly what occurred without additional explanation. To do this, every case note should answer 6 key questions: when, what, who, why, how, and what's next. When documents the date and timing of the interaction or service, including whether it occurred in person, virtually, or at a community access point. This establishes the service timeline and supports accurate reporting. What describes the service, activity, or interaction that took place. It should be factual and specific, such as an eligibility review, career planning discussion, supportive service issuance, or referral to training. Who identifies all parties involved, including the participant, case manager, and any partners or employers. This is especially important in coordinated or co-enrolled services. Why explains the reason for the action or decision. This connects the service to WIOA eligibility, priority of service, assessed barriers, employment goals, or policy requirements, and is critical for monitoring and compliance. How describes how the service was delivered and how requirements were met, such as how eligibility was verified, how documentation was reviewed, or how services were provided virtually or in person. What's next outlines the plan and next steps, including follow-up actions, timelines, and responsibilities. This ensures continuity of services and demonstrates intentional case management. When case notes consistently answer these questions, they strengthen WIOA compliance, improve service quality, and ensure CWDS records clearly reflect informed decision-making and participant progress. A sample enrollment case note for an eligible WIOA adult in CWDS might read like this. Eligibility for WIOA services was determined for this male customer when the case manager met the customer at the Newport Public Library CAP site on 1/12/2026. Source documentation was discussed during an initial telephone conversation and email exchange with the participant prior to program enrollment. Career counseling took place over the phone. The participant's goal is to enroll in electrical trades training. Source documentation was collected, reviewed, and uploaded to CWDS during the application process at the CAP site to verify required eligibility elements, including a state-issued driver's license as proof of identity, a birth certificate as proof of age, and as proof of authorization to work in the United States, and Selective service registration. The individual meets eligibility requirements for the WIOA adult program based on age 18 or older and documented priority of service criteria, low income status as proven by public assistance documentation. The application was completed in CWDS and signed by the participant. The IEP was created to include the goal of electrical training. The next steps for this individual include completing a workforce skills assessment and CASAS to determine basic skill levels. The participant and case manager will meet at the CAP site to complete these digital assessments on Thursday, January 15, 2026.
Service providers are required to establish and maintain internal standard operating procedures, SOPs, that ensure WIOA eligibility is determined consistently, accurately, and in compliance with federal, state, and local policy. SOPs provide clear guidance to staff and reduce variability in how eligibility decisions are made across programs, locations, and service delivery methods. Effective SOPs outline step-by-step processes for eligibility determination, including pre-intake screening, source documentation collection, document review, CWDS data entry, validation, supervisory review, and enrollment approval. They clearly define staff roles and responsibilities, identify required documentation for adult and dislocated worker programs, and specify when self-attestation may or may not be used. SOPs must also address quality control and oversight, such as internal file reviews, supervisory sign-off, corrective action processes, and staff training requirements. These controls help prevent ineligible enrollments, monitoring findings, and disallowed costs. Within SCPa works, consistent SOPs ensure that WIOA eligibility is applied equitably across virtual services, community access points, and partner locations. Standardized processes protect program integrity, support staff confidence, and ensure participants receive appropriate services based on verified eligibility.
Accurate eligibility determination and data validation are foundational to the success and integrity of the WIOA Title I adult and dislocated worker programs. Every eligibility decision must be supported by appropriate source documentation, clearly documented in case notes, and validated in CWDS before enrollment occurs. CWDS serves as the official system of record. Information entered must accurately reflect the individual circumstances and be supported by uploaded documentation linked to each required eligibility element. Data validation is not simply a system step. It is the process that ensures eligibility decisions are defensible, equitable, and compliant with federal, state, and local policy. Consistent application of eligibility requirements protects program funding, prevents monitoring findings, and ensures that services are directed to individuals who meet program criteria and priority of service requirements. For SCPa Works and its partners, strong eligibility and data validation practices also support continuity of services across virtual, community access point, and partner-based service delivery models. By following established procedures, maintaining clear and complete case notes, and validating all required data in CWDS, staff uphold WIOA standards, strengthen program accountability, and ensure participants receive appropriate and timely workforce services. On behalf of SCPa Works, we appreciate the time and talent that you provide to the South Central Pennsylvania Workforce Development System.